Hey, good morning, dudes. All right. (10:07). Take a nice breath of stress air, and let's get started. All right. So we didn't code yesterday. I worked a little bit later than usual. Not like real late, but you know. I work later on Saturday than I do Monday through Friday, so Saturday's actually my longest work day. So coding on Saturdays, I just usually don't do it since I started working Saturdays. Alright, so what did we do last time? Set my timer here to 68 minutes. That was 2 days ago. We created the database class, turned all the functions inside of save logic to be methods of that class. We began but did not finish converting associated namespaces and logic inside of said functions that are now methods. We stopped at line 124 in save logic. So let's go over there. 124. Alright, here we go. So we already know what the title of this one is going to be. It's going to be, we'll say, save system. Database class method. We'll say database class function to method conversion part 2. That's good. Yeah. And then we're going to say continued converting logic and namespace inside of save logic.py after introduction of database class. Logic namely associated with converting regular functions to class methods. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, let's get rid of this. So we need to finish going through each method to revise the code inside of it to reflect the fact that it is a method and not a simple function anymore, i.e. adding self, dot, and modifying logic. Okay? So we stopped right here. I guess I will review from, because trust me, it pays off to review from where, you know, the work that you did yesterday. Spend like, you know, the 10 to 20% of your next day reviewing what you did the previous day. Alright, so let's go back up here. Just go all the way to the top basically, and let's just make sure we got everything right here. So we import SQLite. From pathlib we import path, import pickle, import OS. We import the custom logger to do logging, which we don't actually use right now. That's why it's faded out like that. We have database class, which we created last session. This is going to be inside of the init. We define these attributes, placeholders, just to know what we're dealing with. So we have database, which is going to be associated with save data database file. Database 2, which is going to be associated with the save data stable database file, and then we have database 3, which is going to be associated with save data stable backup. So it's a placeholder for each one of those. And I can put a note here. Save data.db. And then we can just like add this little note here. So we save data stable, and then copy that again, and we'll do save data stable backup. Yeah. All right. And then we have our, well, let's read our comment, make sure it's right. SQLite 3 connections. Placeholders for database SQLite 3, it should be SQLite 3 database connections, are assigned in vacuum into integrity check recreate. Okay. Yeah. That's fine. Type, these are for cursor SQLite 3 cursor object. Purpose placeholders for SQLite 3 database cursors are assigned in vacuum into integrity. Same exact thing. And this is fine. And we'll just put these 3 notes here. So just come right here. Paste this. There we go. Alright, so now we have cursor equals none associated with save data database. Cursor stable is equal to none associated with save data stable database. Then we have cursor stable backup equal to none. It's associated with save data stable backup database. There we go. Okay, that's good. Yeah. All right. Then we have the save database setup, and this syntax is correct. This save database setup taking self, that is also correct. We assign in this function self database, or method rather, it's a method now, self database equal to SQLite 3 connect, and we do // database / save file database. I thought it was save data. See, that's a save data. I don't think we use save file. Yeah, we use save data. Yeah, see, there's 72 of those. So save file needs to be changed to, this needs to be changed to data. Save data. Alrighty then. Save database, SQLite 3 connect, and then so we say save data.db, isolation level is equal to none. We need to check the isolation level thing. Arg that is, but we'll get to that. Creates database file if it doesn't exist. Isolation level equals none. Enables auto commit. Okay, so we do need it to be set to none. 4825 verified. This does work via testing in test reminders, and this syntax does work. That's what I meant. All right, and then we have so we only create database, not database 2 or database 3, because those get created inside of the function vacuum into function. So we don't create those there because they just get deleted and recreated, so it would be pointless for us to create it. It would literally just get deleted before it ever was used, so there's no point in doing it here. I mean, we do have the placeholders right here to just denote that they will exist, so there's that. All right, self cursor equals self database cursor. And that's correct. Then we have self cursor execute pragma journal mode equals write ahead logging, and that makes it way faster. Yeah, so we use that for cursor. We don't have to assign these pragma settings for the other databases. We do that inside of that function we were talking about, where those databases are actually created. The vacuum into function. Then we have pragma synchronous equals normal, makes way faster, cool. Cursor execute create table, so now we're creating the table if it doesn't exist, and that's going to be the save data table with object name. Yeah, so this is all old news. We'll just read it anyway. Save data object name, text type. It's also a primary key. Value is going to be the second column with the type being a blob, which is binary large object. It must be serialized before we can add any data to it. That's important. The unstable, constantly updated database table, periodically copied to stable, save data, stable database at save checkpoints. Yes. All right. So that looks good. Then we have this next function, which is called visual data save function. Its purpose, we didn't modify this one. Well, yeah, we did. I'm sorry. So it takes in self, object name, and data. It serializes the data because it's going to be a blob. So serialize data equals pickle.dumps data, and must serialize data since the value column in DB is blob type. And then we have cursor execute f-string insert into save data, object name, value. So those are the two columns we're dealing with, and the values we're inserting are going to be, there's two of them. Those are the placeholders, and on conflict, so this is an upsert in the case that the object name already exists as a row in the database already. We would update that row and set the value column equal to whatever value we pass as this to this placeholder. So then we do object name, value, and then value for this is the on the update we do this one. It's just the same exact thing, and it must be an upsert, correct? Because this one doesn't ever get deleted or whatever. It always has to be checking to see if it already exists in the database. So that's good to go. Below function save system needs to be tested. Let's see. Where are we at here? Okay. Custom append list save function. Let's see. Below function purpose using custom append list pi and various methods handle. We didn't change anything here, so we don't need to review this. Well, we did. We changed self cursor because that's what it needs to be. And that is correct because we're always going to be directly updating data to the save data table or the save data database, not the stable or backup, and so that's fine. That's as it should be. Then we do self cursor fetch 1 at index 0, grabs index 0. We already know that is correct. The only thing we added was self dot cursor execute. Select value from save data where object name is equal to card group name. Alright, then we serialize the card group data with self cursor. What's already serialized, actually we're retrieving the serialized data with self cursor fetch 1 at index 0. Card group data list equals pickle loads serialized card group data. Okay. Else okay, and then we call self.visualDataSave function. self.visual data save function, card group name, and card group data list. Yep, because now that is a method, so we have to call it through self dot. That might throw an error because does it exist? Well, it exists prior to it. I get confused about how that works sometimes. Anyway, that looks good to me. Then we have this loop data save function, which we don't actually use yet. It needs to be created. Now we have the vacuum into integrity check recreate. So this is the function we were creating last time. And we pass in self, source cursor, target path, database 2 or 3. And I think that's correct. Database 2 or 3 is an integer. It's the int to determine the namespace assigned to the SQLite connect code. Oh, I forgot to target path, database 2 or 3. Target path, data. Okay. Now, so we pass self source cursor, target path, db2 or 3, and then we do source cursor execute vacuum into the target path. So we're vacuuming from the source cursor, which is either going to be save data or save data stable, and it's going to be vacuumed into stable or stable backup. So wait, doesn't this mean that it would already be deleted? Yeah, so the way that we call this function, it's already deleted prior. Let's see about that real quick. Let me put a bookmark here, and then let's look at this. So, yeah, we actually delete right before. But honestly, if this happens every time, dude, I used to, man, this song was good. This was good. This was a good one. Old school Ragnarok, bruh. Man. It was a good one. Anyway, so if we call remove prior to the calling of this function every time, then we could just include that in the function, you know what I mean? It just makes sense. So let me put a little note here. Yeah, true. All right, so we'll get to that. Let's go back to our bookmark. There we go. Alright. Get rid of that bookmark now. So def vacuum into source cursor executes database. Okay, so this is where we get our source cursor, we vacuum into the target path, then we say if db2, we check to see what that is. If it's 2, that means we're calling it in the context of vacuuming into stable. If it's 3, we're calling in the context of stable backup. So then we say self db2 equals SQLite 3 connect target path. And you know what? Couldn't we create a dictionary that refers to each database object if we had, let's just say we had a dictionary, right? To reduce lines here and to just be a little smarter, couldn't we have a dictionary? We'll just say a dictionary. And then we had 2, which is associated with db2 or 3. 2 would be associated with self.db2. And then 3 would be associated with self.db3. Could we not just do this? And then I'll separate this so I know that, like, I'm just, you know, what the f did I just do, bro? I hit page up or I hate when I do that. Why does it look different now? Am I just like imagining this? Why is this terminal so big? Get out of here. Alright. So then we would say, instead of writing all these lines here, having the if and then else, because this is the same shit, right? We could then say we would have self db2, and then it would also be, it would be a tuple, and it would say self. This one would be associated with self dot cursor stable, and then we could make this one be a tuple with database 3 and self dot cursor stable backup. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying here? Would we not be able to do that? And then we could just do if, well, we wouldn't even need to do if db2 or 3. We would just say adict at db2 or 3, that key, and then we would say at index 0, because we're dealing with the database, you see, and they say equals SQLite 3 dot connect, and then we would have target path, isolation level equals none, and then we would do adict db2 or 3 at index 1 equals whoa, wait a second. Yeah. So then we would be saying self.cursor stable equals self.db2.cursor. So then we would just say adict at index 0. And you know, we could just call this the DB. Does that make sense? And then here we would just say the DB equals SQLite 3 connect, and then this would be equal to the DB dot we could call this the cursor. We don't have to. I mean, we could do it like that. We would say the cursor, and then the cursor would be equal to the DB dot cursor, right? I think so. So the cursor equals the database dot cursor. And then target cursor yeah, so I confused myself a little bit here. Let's div this up a little bit. So we got the cursor, the database, and the cursor. So adict at key 2 is the tuple self db2, which would be associated with self cursor stable. Then adict at key 3 would be the tuple self db3 and self cursor stable backup. And then we have the database is equal to adict db2 or 3 at index 0, which would refer to either db2 or db3, depending on what db2 or 3 was. And then we have the cursor, which is the same thing except referencing index 1, which would refer to self.cursorStable or self.cursorStable backup, depending on what db2 or 3 was. And then we would say the database equals, and that's to mimic this line right here. So the database, aka self.db2 or db3, it's just referring to it in a different namespace through the db instead of self.db2 or self.db3, is equal to SQLite 3 connect target path isolation level none, and then self.cursorStable, which is the equivalent of the cursor, because that refers to either cursor stable or cursor stable backup, depending on what db2 or 3 is equal to the database, which would either be self.db2 or self.db3 dot cursor. Yeah, so this is correct. So this is good. This is good. This is great. This is fantastic. The question is it gonna, my concern here is referring to this object through the dictionary. Is it going to actually refer to that object attribute, or is it just gonna pass in the value of that attribute and modify it's not going to actually modify self.db2. It's going to be modifying like the value associated with self.db2. You know what I mean? In a different memory location. That's a little bit of like Python intermediate syntax, but it saves us a bunch of lines, and then we can just do self.cursorStable. So that would be the cursor. So then we would just say the cursor dot execute, and then this would be replaced with synchronous normal. There you go. That's great. And then from then on, it would just be the same, like the existing code. It would be target. I thought we didn't have target cursor. Yeah, we don't have target cursor. Oh wait, no, we do. In that context, we do. In this new context, it would be. We would then have new database like this, and then it would be while not corrupted. Let's just go ahead and copy this up here. And then instead of target cursor, it would just be the cursor. Does this make sense? It makes sense to me. Yeah, and source cursor already exists as an arg. Okay, yeah, I feel like this is good. So let's compare how many lines this is. And I've gotten pretty good at Python programming. I can read this. It's not that complicated, honestly. Like, it's a dictionary, you know, very straightforward. So we have from 105 to 118, so that's 13 lines, right? And then we have from 121 to 139, and that's going to be 18 lines. So we reduced from 18 to 13, which is like a 25% reduction. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but if I could reduce the size of my project by 25%, that's a lot. Every line is another risk for a mistake, is the way that I see it. So like less lines is almost always better. Not always, but most times. I would say like 8 out of 10. One line instead of 2 is better. Yeah, so the concern though is whether or not I can actually refer to these objects the same way, like whether I can refer to the objects in this manner and it still work as I expect it to. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this code here, and I'll just put a little note here. We'll say proposed replacement for below section to reduce lines and improve logic. And then we'll have another note right here that says being replaced by above section, leaving until I am 100% sure new form is valid. Get rid of that. Alright. So let's go ahead and comment this out real quick. And then I like to put 2 spaces between the sections when I do this sort of thing, like a proposed revision or refactor. That's just the way that I like to do it. So we have test reminders. I don't know what I was testing here. I was making sure that it worked, and it did work. But we can get rid of this one. What we'll do here is paste in. I'll have to recopy it. Paste in this. Oh shit. It's a boss fight. This is like a boss fight. This is the equivalent of a boss fight. It's not easy. A little bit next level Python here. It's not that complicated, but okay. So how are we gonna test this? All right. So we need a class called a class for database. We'll just say class database. Then we're gonna do def init. And then we're gonna do self.db2 equals none. Self.db3. And then self.cursor stable equals none. Which we don't actually have to do this. We don't need a placeholder. You can create attributes as you go. So I really didn't need to do that, but it's all good. We need to import SQLite 3. Then we need to well, in the context of that function, database is created. And that's the question that I have here, is whenever we do self db2 here, well, let's create that function too. We're gonna need to create that function. We'll create, what's it called? Yeah, because it has to be, to refer to self.db2, it has to be a method. So we'll say, we'll just call it the method for now, which takes self, and then this is all going to happen in the context of this method. All right. Dictionary, the database, the cursor. Okay, and it has to take in these same arguments. I'll just copy this line altogether. Alright, so yeah, we're basically creating a little mini replica of that section. So we have the database class. Alright. Yeah, we reviewed all this. Okay, so now, and we have to import OS. Import OS. What else? Why is it showing ... right here? What's up with that? Okay. And we also have to create the initial database stuff, so that needs to be copied as well for this to work. So we need this one. Yeah, feel? You see what I'm doing here? We are just replicating. I already know there's gonna be some errors. I can smell it, dude. I know. See this? It's one line off. I mean, one space. Why? Doesn't it just look better with that div, dude? Tell me it don't, bro. Tell me it doesn't. Because it does. Okay, so now we're going to create the database. We're just going to call it database equals database. There you go. Now, what do we need to do? Okay, then we need to run a database dot save database setup. And then we're gonna run database dot vacuum into integrity check recreate. We're gonna pass in the source cursor. So the source cursor should be, oh yeah, we have to have database and regular cursor. So we need to do self.db and then self.just cursor. Great. Okay. And then we have so the source cursor will actually be database dot save data. Or wait, it doesn't. Source cursor would just be database.cursor. I'm tripping. Then the target path would be, well, where is the target path at? I feel like we need to save that as an attribute. I feel like we should have those two paths as a attribute. So we'll have, like, when we call, oh, you know what? It's because we, I know where it is. Where it's in client? No, man. Vacuum into integrity check. It's wherever we call this function, which is where? Right here. Okay, this is where we gotcha. This is where. Damn, do I have to copy this one too? I mean, I guess it will allow us to test it. I'm just like, well, shit, I could just copy the whole file at this point. You know what I mean? There's no reason to not do that. I can just literally copy the entire file. Yeah. So we're just, because to test it, well, I mean, it would be a good practice to test it, but you know what? We'll do a small test first, and then we can copy in the whole thing and test like the rest of it. So for now, we'll just copy these two paths, go over to test reminders, and what we'll do is we're gonna have these as self dot and self dot. And then here we're gonna call this function with the database dot save data stable path, because that's the one we're gonna be, that's our target path. And then 2 or 3 is gonna be well, since we're passing stable, this means we are going to be dealing with 2, because we're going to be vacuuming into stable, not backup. Therefore, yeah, we're creating stable, not backup. Therefore, we want to pass in 2. Now, this makes me feel like I could mess this whole thing up by passing the wrong number here. It would probably be wise for me to remove this parameter and just allow us to directly determine the 2 or 3 or whatever based on the target path itself. I mean, it's a little bit slower, but it's more secure, meaning that like I can't mess it up, you know? Like it won't be, it's not up to me to put the right input. It's up for the computer to compute it, and if, you know, it will never be wrong. Does it make sense? We might change that. For now, we'll just leave it as it is. Okay, so next, what do we do? Well, let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. I'm pretty sure we're going to hit an error. So let's move to Canasta testing. And then we're going to do pi test reminders. Well, it didn't throw any error? Really? Damn. I'm impressed. Okay, hold up. So this should have created the save data database in DB. So let's go and see if that's there. I saw it change, so it should actually. Why is this? What did I click? I don't want to click that. Let's go over here. Alright, so it worked, dude. Damn. We did no errors. Bruh. I leveled up, eh? Okay, save data database got created when we ran save database setup function. Then we created save data stable whenever we did vacuum into. Really? So let me think about this for a second. Did this really work exactly how I thought it would the first try? Okay, let's see. If it did work, let's do it like this. We can check. Well, actually, let's call it a third time with 3. And in this one, we're gonna pass save data stable. Damn, bro, I'm like flexing right now. I'm like, holy shit, I did this. My first try, bro. Impressive. Impressive, dude. Let's get a div here. That coffee give me acid reflux. That coffee got me burping a little bit. Alright, let's run it again. Uh-oh. Okay, so we get an error. The error is associated with 6553, which is right here. So it's trying to vacuum into... Okay, right. That's because we don't have the... in the context, this is what I was talking about before with the delete OS remove line. As long as we, like, in the real world, this would have worked, but because we have it in a test environment, it's not running OS remove because we created it when we last ran it. So it has to be removed first. So let me go ahead and see, because I'm going to end up copying this function from here back over to here. Well, we'll go through and see what the diff is. The difference is not going to be much. Anyway, so let's look at the OS remove. Okay, so we say cursor stable backup, execute, pragma integrity check. If it is okay, then delete stable. Really, the question is this save data stable path argument always the same as the argument passed to vacuum into integrity check recreate? If it's the same, then we can just put this OS remove inside of this function as the first line executed in the function. Does that make sense? So let's look for OS remove. Save data stable path, save data stable path. Backup path, backup path. Yes, so this is going to go... see, it doesn't always do that. See, if we were to... Okay. Okay. So... we have the option here. It happens 1, 2. It doesn't happen this time. So if we used the function for this line, which we would want to, it's complicated. It's not consistent. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes we remove first, but this time we don't. So, like, we would have to make this operation a variable. Like, it only happens if such and such arg is such and such. Y'all feel? We would have to have like a OS remove bool arg parameter rather associated with inside of the vacuum into integrity check recreate function. Because we remove prior. This one though, we would want to call this vacuum function in place of this line. And does that internally, let me look at this side by side. Does it internally handle Let's look at it. So what does this function do? Line by line. It does vacuum into, and then it would check to see if it's integritous, and that happens right here. But why doesn't it do the SQLite 3 connect and the cursor and stuff? It doesn't do any of that, but it should, right? So this code here in save logic is just, it's incomplete. Yeah, because instead of adding that logic into this function, since we were already decided that we were gonna put, you know, this repeated code inside of this function, we just added that logic inside of this function. So this is technically, like, quote unquote correct. We would do the vacuum into, but the only difference is we wouldn't do OS remove. So we would vacuum into, we would do the other things that we need to do, which would be from here to here, and then we would check to see if it is integritous. So let me put a number here. I'll put replacement. It's just a little note here. We'll put replacement. Replace with vacuum into integrity check recreate without OS remove. At beginning. And then this one would be it's making my head spin, bro. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Alright. So this section is a little bit different. I'm trying to pair this with the function, and it has to be perfect, and it's hard to explain. Let me look at this more carefully. So if we added in the function here, this would happen, this would happen, that would happen. Everything up to this point would happen. So we would vacuum into, we would check for integrity, we would remove if it wasn't, and then we would re-vacuum into the target path again. But then we have, this is where it deviates, right here. OS remove save data stable path. And then, so this is that rare scenario. It's the rare scenario wherein it was the first time copying from save data to save data stable, and then it crashed prior to being able to create backup. Gotcha. So in this case, we have stable, but we don't have stable backup. So before we do stable, we create the backup to ensure we have something to fall back onto in the case that this process fails. So that's why we do this vacuum into save data stable backup. So this function, this section being replaced by the vacuum function would be fine. This right here, all this that's highlighted. Now, let me put end of function replaced. Now after that, we do OS remove, save data stable, and then we do vacuum into save data stable. So this would be a separate function call for vacuum. But in this case, it would be with the OS remove. I got this, bro. I got it, dude. Relax, man. Jesus Christ. There we go. Alright, then we do it again, baby. We do it again. So then we're going from save data. Oop, oop, oop. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Without. Well, I got ahead of myself. With OS remove at the beginning. True. Okay. But this one is without. Alright. Then we have replace. This one is going to be with OS remove. And then this one is going to be the end of the function. Then we're going to have why does this one not have let's see. Why does this one not have remove prior? This means first time copying from save data to save data stable. So there is no... There isn't one to delete. Gotcha. So this would just be replace without. And that's just the integrity check. That's why we have the double vacuum. Thus, the whole point of this function, to get rid of this fucking clutter, repeated code. I hate that. It's terrible. It's so hard to read. It literally, like, it scrambles your brain when you look at it. It's a nightmare. Replace the vacuum into integrity check. Blah, 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 blah. And this is going to be without remove. Yes. So, yeah, we're going to use that with or without OS remove as an argument. So let me go ahead and add this as a note here. Let's put... Man, I'm on fire, dog. Wait, this ain't right. Not this function. That would be the vacuum into integrity check. Oh, so many comments. I can't wait to get rid of them. Straight up. Below function. Save system. Need to add without OS remove bool. parameter to this function to denote whether we are calling os.remove at the beginning of the function. Beginning of the function. Yeah. Yes, this is correct. 3 more minutes, baby. Okay. We'll get back to that. Let's go back to where we were doing this. Let's see. Replace, so this is without. This is gonna be down here. This one is gonna be this would just be without, because we already removed it prior, because it's conditional in this case. You see what I'm saying here? It's conditional. So we couldn't just use the arg. We couldn't say run the os remove because that's conditional. And we don't want to add this condition in the function if that condition is only checked once. Like, it's not checked in the context of all the other function calls. This makes sense. So then, the fuck am I doing here? So this would be without. Vacuum into save data stable without. Yeah. Yeah, I got good at this shit, bro. I just did. Okay. I'm going to take a little break here. It's the end of our 68 minutes. I'll come back. But this was good. Now, so we can test this again. The only difference here from the real world application is the fact that we have the OS remove stuff. But since we don't have that here, we're gonna just manually delete these two. Yeah, that gives me anxiety when I delete stuff. Now, we can go back to testing and run this. And it works. But I want to test adding, let me put this. How do we phrase this? Let's just put, need to add, test lines which add some data to save data db so that we can retrieve this data from the other DBs to verify the process worked correctly. And yeah, and that means if it did, if it all shows the proper data, that means this code is 100% perfect, baby. On the first try, dude. First try. Swish. That's great. That's pretty fucking rare. That's why you review your code 3 times. Because I didn't have to look at a single bug, and it feels great, dude. Holy shit. Alright, so we stop here. This is line 6572 and test reminders 6572. See right here. Line 65. 60. 65. 72. In test reminders. Alright, let's CD out to the root directory of the project. We have done that. Now we can do git branch to verify we're on the correct feature branch. We are. We're going to do git add to add everything. Git commit dash m double quotes. Paste in this devlog entry, which has the title as save system database class function to method conversion part 2, associated code testing and test reminders. And yeah, there we go. Then we successfully committed 6 files changed, 116 insertions, 35 deletions, and now we can do git push to push to the remote repo. There it goes. Alright, now we can close out of this. There he is. Commander-in-Chief, dog. We're going over to Canasta. We're going to copy this little dude. We're going to back up. We're going to delete the old dude. Replace him with the new dude. Look at all those cards, dude. You see it. I seen it. There we go. 41325. That's correct. So we did it the right way. We're going to rename this to reflect today's date, the last time we made a local backup. Alright, so that's it. I will probably, the goal is to come back and do another little session. I'm going to go take a walk. I might take a shower. I was going to go to the gym or something, but I don't know. It's Sunday. We'll see. I got to file extension for my taxes or go ahead and file them. I don't know. We'll see. Because the deadline's in 2 days. I was going to do that today. But the goal is to come back and get some more done. But yeah, good session. Great test results. Basically done with it at this point. We just have to finish the last little bit. Test it some more. Review everything. Make sure it's nice and clean. And yeah, move on. Alright. See you later.